Hi, I'm astrologer Penny Dix. Welcome to another Astrobite. And the Astrobite I'm bringing you today is for, the exact date is April the 12th. It's Saturday. However, the energy will be around yesterday, today, tomorrow. We have a full moon over the 12th, 13th. So that's kind of like just in Europe, that's just after midnight in Europe, but for the Americas, Canada, it is on the 12th, earlier in the day, in the evening. So what about the energy today? Because we have the sun in Aries conjunct our centaur, our wounded healer, Chiron. And also we have Venus, our planet of relationship, finance, economy, value, attraction, and Venus finally goes direct again in Pisces. So what do we make of all this energy? Because it's as if we're moving into a period where things are going to start to shift gear, which we will all be hugely pleased to hear. And I want to actually start with Venus because I think the fact that Venus is going direct, even though it'll still be conjunct Saturn for quite a few days, what will come from this, I think, is a shift from Monday, from the full moon, to a little bit more of an easing up of our fears and anxieties about the financial world and about the economy and how the actions of the US administration have been affecting the rest of the world. So hopefully this actually will mean long-term we are going to get long-term gains. And as I said, Saturn is just slowing us down in our anticipation of things unfolding in a more positive way. But we have to look at this stellium of energy in Pisces because we still have Mercury at 27 degrees. It's nearly going into Aries. And the North Node is at 26 degrees. Saturn is at 25 degrees and Venus is at 24 degrees. When you get a cluster of planets like this, it's known as a stellium in astrology. And what we do is we get a sense of the energy of Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. So there's something here about completion, bringing things to a conclusion, to closure. Before we begin, we embark on a new journey as we move into the sign of Aries. So the fact that Venus is now moving direct is a good sign. It's going to be helpful, but it may be a bit slow because Saturn is kind of standing in its way. So Venus is going to have to move past Saturn and leave Saturn behind before it can really feel, or we can really feel, that we're getting the effects of a freeing up of the economic sort of situation in the world. So what about this Sun conjunct Chiron? Because the Sun, remember, in Aries is at the beginning of the zodiac wheel. So it has this sense of new beginnings, of birth, of new cycles in what we want to initiate, bring into our lives. It's conjunct Chiron. Chiron is a centaur. Chiron is one of the space objects of a group of space objects known as the centaurs. And Chiron himself was a kindly centaur. He was gentle, helpful, and hence he gained this reputation of being a healer. And he has a wound which never heals. So he represents that part of us that has inner trauma from way, way back in our lives. Nobody is immune to these kind of traumas that we all carry, be it conscious or unconscious. The sun is highlighting it, but the sun is also about health. It's about shedding light on. So I think simultaneously with the full moon in Libra, which happens, as I say, overnight, I'm going to do a separate astrobite for that because I want to talk about the individual signs and where you can expect which house, which part of your life is going to be affected by this particular full moon in Libra. But in general, you see, we have Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries and 28 minutes. So it's creeping ever so gently into the sign of Aries. But the Sun and Chiron are, our wounds are being exposed, probably through this full moon. There may be something that comes up that makes us feel a bit raw and a bit vulnerable. But remember, Chiron is about healing. And it's only when we have a wound cleaned, if we have a scar or a wound that has to be covered and ointment put on it, stitches, then Chiron is the energy that is going to, along with the sun, help this wound to heal. So this is that point when the dressing is taken off, the stitches are removed, and that scar, that pink fresh scar, is fresh to the air, to the sun, to heal naturally. So we have to take this as a metaphor. How and what psychologically within your soul and psyche feels a little bit raw, a little bit vulnerable, a little bit exposed at the moment, because that is what can recover through this healing energy around over this weekend. So just let me look at check my notes, because it's the sun, these wounds can be to do with our identity, how we value ourselves. And I'm thinking about the fact that Venus is going direct at the same time. So it's as if this is very much about how we feel about ourselves, how we are shown in the world, how we show ourselves to the world. It can highlight past experiences because maybe something triggers it. Somebody says something where we felt unseen, rejected, or somehow just not worthy or not good enough, just because that's how we've been made to feel. And somehow we've allowed ourselves to fall into that projection. So this Sun Chiron is challenging us. Are we asserting our needs? Are we taking the initiative in situations? Are we trying? Are we attempting to look at why perhaps an exclusion from an event, for example, why we've reacted rather than think, would I have gone anyway? You know, it's all things that we have to think about, because maybe actually they were doing us a favor. This is where we have to see how we can flip the energy, how we can turn our vulnerability into power. We can turn our imperfections into our strengths, so that the very pain that we feel becomes the actual source of our own learning, experience, and wisdom, which gives us the ability to guide others. This energy is a time when we can expect our ego to be prodded a bit, because we do feel maybe not quite so confident. But what is happening with the sun shedding its light on this area of our inner psyche is it's trying to help us break through the false images, the false personas that we have of ourselves, or that we allow others to project on us, so that in turn we become more authentic. You know, Aries energy is about being bold, being truthful, even when things are tough. So we have to find the courage, the self-leadership. We have to find that independence. So if we find that and heal our self-worth wounds, we can help others who struggle in that way. So I think on a more wider, broader scale, it's about the wounded masculine. And I think this is why we're seeing such bravado coming out of the US administration, whether this gamble pays off or not. And none of us can know whether it will. There are the naysayers and the yay-sayers. Who knows? I would suggest long-term, whatever happens, because I think there will be more backstepping, as there has already been this week, it'll all be okay. These things will usually resolve. But we have to look at the lessons it's teaching us individually, as I've said before. So there's something about this Sun conjunct Chiron, which is the collective healing that needs to happen around the divine masculine and our own inner divine masculine. So I think it's quite interesting energy we have at the moment. And I think sometimes we tend to overlook these minor transits, and yet there is a richness, there is a wealth that can be learnt from them. So I have a phrase for today. So it's a word, but I wanted it to be about healing, but inner healing. So as usual, I found a few quotes that will help us get a sense of how we can embrace our inner healing. There's a quote here which I actually used in the overview of my 2025 year ahead astrology, and it's by Rumi, and it's, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." I think that's beautiful. And then we have another one here, which is about the process of healing by Akshay Dubey. "Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls our lives." When the planet goes through the difficulties that it is facing at the moment, with the stock markets, the world economy in general, the various war zones, because we get them center stage thrown at us on the media, it's very difficult not to fall into allowing the fear of the worst case scenario to dominate our lives. So I think it's always worth stepping back and actually thinking in this way, that we can manage all of these things, whatever the ultimate outcomes, by allowing ourselves to take back our own personal control over our lives and what we do individually, with the way we think, with the way we process information, with the way we are able to not allow ourselves to get caught into the damaging psychology of negativity and fear, and find that inner strength. Louise Hay said about inner strength, you have been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens. Great. Khalil Gibran said, talking about how we can grow through pain, out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls, the most massive characters are seared with scars. And here's one by Brené Brown about self-acceptance. I now see how owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do. And it's true. And then finally, or nearly finally, I've got a couple more. Let me see, we've got Rumi. I like Rumi, and this is about the inner journey, the journey within. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. Now there's a thought. And finally, on transformation, we have a proverb. Just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. So I think they are rather profound and lovely quotes that can help us endure what can be some very difficult times and challenging times for many, many people. And remember, my full moon in Libra video is up on my channel, and the Astrobite for tomorrow is going to contain the zodiac signs for each individual sign for the full moon in Libra. And remember, on Sunday night, that's tomorrow if you're watching this today, Saturday, I will be doing my live week ahead, where I will talk about all these things and so much more. So please join me. I would love that. And thank you to many of you who have booked sessions that I've worked with, who continue to support the channel with your comments, your likes. And I'd love it if you'd subscribe if you're new to my channel. So on that note, I'll say thanks for joining me. Bye for now. And I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.